Good morning, everyone. Schuyler Callihan here on Between the Eers. It is the morning after West Virginia falling to Iowa State last night, 28 to 16. Another big missed opportunity for the Mountaineers to get a big time win. They're now 0-3 in these big stage games, which is pretty much going to be the talking point of our episode today. And it's just another opportunity that's gone to the wayside. And it's been three different types of failures in the Penn State game. It felt like there was just too many distractions, too much hype, too much focus on this one singular game that they knew that it was going to be a tall task, but I think it just got too much into their head, and it showed very clearly in the first couple of drives in the second half against Penn State, and then it kind of got away from them. The Pitt game may not have been a big stage at the moment, but for that game and for those two teams, it certainly was. Being the backyard brawl, it's a heated rivalry, and you had a 10-point lead with 3+ minutes to go in the game, and you found a way to lose. Last night, you have the ball for over half of the first quarter on the opening drive, and then have a chance to go up at least 10, potentially 14. Rodney Gallagher drops the pass. Michael Hayes hooks the 36-yard field goal. 3 plays later, Iowa State's in the end zone. All that momentum, all that confidence takes a major hit. And it wasn't just that, but that really felt like the turning point early in the game to where Iowa State kind of gained control. And it was just one thing after another, whether it was the bad snaps, the inability to get the run game going, the inability to get off the field. Iowa State yesterday was 9 of 14 on third down conversions and 2 of 2 on fourth down. So on critical downs, you could say, 11 of 16. That's not good. And it felt like it was much worse than that for West Virginia because they were able to get to third down a bunch. I mean, you had 14 opportunities to get off the field, and you got off the field 5 times. One of them was the first drive of the game. So, or second drive. But to not have that consistency show up from a week to week basis offensively is has been a major issue. Garrett Green is only completing 56% of his passes, folks. Like, this is the guy that we talked about all offseason that was going to have this gigantic leap. He was going to go from a 53% completion percentage passer to 60, maybe even 65% is what the expectation was from in the building. We're halfway through the season. He's gone up 3 percentage points. That's not going to get it done. You're not going to be a legit contender in the Big 12 conference if your quarterback's completing 56% of his passes and he's already thrown more interceptions this season than he did all last year. It's just not going to happen. But my main takeaway wasn't just from what happened on the field. I think we can all dissect that, and we will. My thoughts go to what happened in the post-game press conference. For the first time in at least a while, I'm going to bring my comments on the post-game press conference to this show. Neal Brown talked about the officiating extensively last night. And I get there were some calls in the game or non-calls in the game where he had every right to be upset. I think the Milam hold, the Cole Taylor non pass interference that led to the interception, sure. But there were some, and even the C.J. Donaldson getting dragged down to the end zone that probably was a very catchable touchdown ball delivered by Garrett. There late in the fourth quarter was no flag on the play. Rocco Becht had two throws that seemed to me like he was well within the pocket and should have been intentional grounding. Neither were called. So there were reasons for Neal to be upset. But for that to, I don't want to say dominate or control most of the press conference, but for that to be such a talking point in the press conference, I mean, he went on a rant twice during his post game presser about the officiating and the calls and all this stuff. That's not why they lost the game. And he admitted that. He said the officiating was not the reason why we lost the game. The reason they lost the game was because they didn't play well. But that should have been the main focus. It should have been why did West Virginia's offense only score 16 points, six of which came in the final few minutes of the game in garbage time, essentially. Why, after you controlled the ball for over half the first quarter, were you unable to hold on to the time of possession like you did a week ago in Oklahoma State? Why did the sequence happen where Gallagher drops the ball, you miss the field goal, you give up the touchdown, and boom, there goes all the momentum? Why does Brandon Yates have all the bad snaps? I've never seen a game where a center's had that many bad snaps. I've seen a few where there's, two or three and you move on and everything's good. But 8, 9, 10, 11 bad snaps? I mean, what in God's name is going on? And Neal didn't make a change. He said in his post-game presser that he's got a bit of a hand issue. Okay, well, if he's got a hand issue and the snaps are clearly not coming in clean and it's knocking you behind the chains and you're having to play from behind the chains constantly, that's an issue. Get Landon Livingston in the game. It's not ideal, but playing behind the sticks on bad snaps is not ideal either. What is it going to hurt? I don't know. He showed he was capable last week when Landon came in and helped lead a touchdown drive against Oklahoma State. I get it's a big stage. You probably don't want to yank a 60-year senior for that. But again, what is it going to hurt? The other question that, or the one question that was asked in the press conference that I didn't know if it was going to get asked or not, but it did. It was about Garrett and if there was a thought to maybe going to Nico there late in the fourth quarter. And Neal just shut it down. And it was kind of a ridiculous response to some extent. He said, "Why would we do that? Did you think we needed one or something like that?" And yeah, Neal, I think you did need one. I think everyone could see that you needed a spark. You're down 28-10. Garrett had just thrown his second interception. I don't think it would have been the worst of ideas to throw Nico in there. That's not to say that he would have came in and engineered a comeback. You're down three scores late in the fourth quarter. But it would have given you something to chew on heading into next week. Not saying it's time to make a full on quarterback change, but get Nico some reps. The game's more than likely over with. You're going to need a whole hell of a lot to just get back into it. So, yeah, I think you did need to make a change. Again, Garrett Green is 56% completion percentage on the season. He has more picks than he did this season, than he did all of last season. And what I put in my Sunday morning column here is that in the big stage games, what I consider the big stage games, Penn State, Pitt last night, Garrett is now 49 of 90 combined in those three games, which is 54% for 577 yards, which equates to 192.3 yards per game, three touchdowns, four interceptions. That's not good enough. Why is your fifth year senior quarterback seemingly taking a step back from what he was a year ago? Sure, the completion percentage is up 3 points. Great. That doesn't mean anything if he doesn't show up in the big games. Where is the big game Garrett Green? When is that going to come along? Will it come along? I don't know. But there's too much outside focus, outside attention in that post game press conference. Too much talking about the officiating, too much talking about this and that, talking about how why would we, why would we make a quarterback change when you're down three scores in the fourth quarter? Well, Neal, because that's probably what most coaches would do. If the game's most likely in hand and you're struggling to do anything offensively, probably wouldn't be a bad idea to see what you got in Nico. Not saying again that that's something that you would go into and make a full change, but you get some reps. See what happens in those reps. Neal is now 3-16, guys. against ranked opponents. West Virginia has not been ranked a single day since he took the job back in 2019. It's year 6 for those that are counting or wondering. How long does he need to show that he can win the big games? To show that he can beat teams that maybe he's not favored to beat, or just beat teams that aren't just fighting for bowl eligibility. The three teams that West Virginia has beat this year is an FCS team and two teams that have yet to win a game in the Big 12. Guess who you got next? Kansas State. After that, the schedule somewhat lightens up, but if history tells us anything, you're going to be 3-4 by this time next week. And in year 6 of this tenure, that is just not feasible. Can't have it. There are so many examples around the country where coaches are turning programs around on a dime within a year, within 2 years. In some cases, it may take 3. Neal Brown has had the longest leash that I've seen in recent memory. I mean, this is 6 years, and there's yet to be a number next to West Virginia's name. How much longer? How much longer is it going to is there does there need to be for him to have the right pieces in place to go and get the job done? I'm not trying to light a fire under him or put the hot seat conversation back out there, but it is what it is. The data speaks for itself. 3-16 versus top 25 teams, 7 straight losses against ranked teams. You're 3-3 in year 6. And no one's going to be ashamed for losing to the number 11 team in the country, who will more than likely be a top 10 team either next week or sometime very soon. Iowa State is a legitimate football team. Losing to them is no big deal. But losing the way you continue to lose in these big games is what's more alarming. Earlier in the week, Neal said that his team wasn't going to flinch on the big stage. Well, I don't know that they flinched, but they sure as heck didn't step up. They weren't executing. They weren't locked in. And that's a recurring theme in these big stage games. The lack of focus is just enormous. So I'm not sure when they're going to get this thing turned to the point where you feel good about the climb, because it's only going to last for so long. The message is going to grow stale, and I think it already has for the majority of the fan base. But when you continue to preach the same message week after week after week, and the results just don't ever come, you can lose a locker room, you can lose a fan base, you can lose an administration. This is a results-oriented business. You don't have the results, you're going to lose your job. And that's not just talking Neal Brown. That's talking the quarterback spot, the center spot, the cornerback spot, coordinators, anything. This is a group. This is a team effort. and it's not been up to par this season. This has been a massively disappointing season. You had everything coming back from a 9-win team a year ago, a team that finished 4th in the Big 12 with a senior quarterback, a dynamic duo in the backfield, and you're 3-3. You let one get away against Pitt, and in the other 2 games against top 25 teams, you fell flat on your face offensively. There's way too much experience, way too much talent on that West Virginia offense to look the way it has against ranked teams. Just because there's a number next to a team's name doesn't mean it gives anybody a pass to look bad. If anything, that's when you got to prove yourself. But back to the messaging. Like, Neal can continue to credit the other team all he wants. He can continue to say, we just lost to a really good football team. But at some point, you have to win some of these games. You have to at least look competitive in these games. You have to be locked in and focused in some of these games. Hasn't happened yet. So we'll see. I'm just going to let this year play out. Um, Last year, and maybe even the times this year too, I was quick to write them off, and I mean, deservedly so. But you have another opportunity next week against Kansas State, and if you find a way to win that one, then you're still in good shape. You're 3-1. But the problem is, how do you get folks? How do you get you don't want to encourage me or to persuade me. It's Neal has to persuade his team, convince the fan base. How do you convince the team and fan base that there is something to trust, that there is greener, or brighter days ahead? I don't know what you point to, but we'll see. West Virginia 3-3. They'll take on Kansas State next week, and yeah, if history proves itself, they'll be 3-4. 7 games into the year, 2-2 in Big 12 play, but it's another opportunity to win a big game at home, and Neal's got to get this one. That's all I got to say. So that'll do it for me here this morning on Between the Ears. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you hit the subscribe button here on our YouTube page at West Virginia on SI. Give us a follow on X at SI_WVU. We'll be back on Tuesday for another episode of Between the Ears. Until then, take care.